She didn't cry at the burial. Kose kun kankan. People watched, whispered under their breath like leaves in dry harmattan wind. But Adesewa, only 27, stood still, her eyes locked on the wooden coffin like she was daring it to rise, to change its mind. Her husband, Obafemi, wasn't meant to die. Not yet, not now. They had just finished patching the roof. The night before he traveled, they'd argued over too much pepper in the goat meat pepper soup. Now, she stood before a grave, clutching her small handbag as if it held her together. When the final prayer faded and the red clay sand thudded against the coffin, Adesewa turned quietly and walked away. She couldn't watch the earth swallow her forever. The house welcomed her like a ghost. His slippers still sat by the door. The old chair he always sat on, untouched. Even the half-open tin of powdered milk, the one he always forgot to seal, remained stubbornly still. Everything was frozen in time. The air felt heavy, as if grief itself had settled into the walls. That night, Adesewa didn't sleep. At midnight, she sat with pen and paper, the kind with faint blue lines. She stared for a long time before writing, "Obami, I don't know how to stay in this house without hearing your early morning cough from the bathroom." She paused, swallowed back the ache. "I cooked your favorite eforiro today." I kept glancing at the door, hoping you'd walk in and say, "So you finally admitted that mine tastes better?" But the door stayed closed. She wrote for hours, page after page. When she finished, she folded the letter, placed it in an envelope, and wrote just one word on it: to Obafemi. The next morning, she dropped it in the old rusted postbox beside St. Moses' Church. And so, it began. Every week, no matter the weather, Adesewa wrote. Some letters were full of small things: what she cooked, the neighbors' gossip, her dreams. Other letters were soaked with tears and silence. Friends stopped coming. They didn't understand that her mind had followed her husband into the grave, but she didn't care. She wore her ring. She laid only on one side of the bed. She cooked for two, and she kept writing. It was the 21st letter. She sat at her desk again, but the air felt strange. The wind hummed through the windows like a forgotten chant. Her heart beat faster. Still, she shook it off and walked to the postbox like she always did. 2 days later, something impossible happened. She came home from the market and saw something sticking out of a wooden mail slot. An envelope, brown, just like hers. No name, no stamp, just her handwriting, copied almost exactly. She froze. She didn't touch it at first. She stared at it like it was cursed. When she finally reached out, her hands trembled. No stamp, no sender. Just a single line, written neatly in the center. To Sewa. Adesewa's fingers shook. She held the envelope like it might disappear if she blinked. Her heartbeat was so loud, it felt like Obafemi himself was knocking from inside her chest. She didn't open it, not yet. She carried it to the kitchen and laid it gently on the counter. Then she boiled water for tea. Tea she never drank. The envelope sat quietly, like it knew something she didn't. It stared back, patient, haunting. Finally, she picked it up. Her thumb hovered, then tore the paper open, slowly. One page, one line. Sewa me, I heard you. She dropped the letter like it had burned her. Her chest tightened as she stepped back, eyes darting to the curtains. But the house remained still, too still. She picked it up again. She read the line over and over. I heard you. I heard you. I heard you. The handwriting was familiar, too familiar. But was it really his? It was neat, careful, like someone holding her heart with shaking hands. She sat on the couch. The television played, but she couldn't hear it. Only those 3 words echoed. By midnight, her pen was trembling on paper again. She wrote, "Who are you? How did you get my letters? Is this a cruel joke? If it is, please, stop. I don't think I can take it. But if you're truly my Obafemi, I need more than 3 words." She sealed the envelope and walked through the moonlight to the post box. But this time, she didn't leave immediately. She stood there, watching, waiting, listening. 20 minutes passed. No footsteps, no whispers, nothing. The next morning, she told herself it was imagination, a prank, a cruel one. But by afternoon, after returning from the market, barefoot, her basket still full, she saw it. Another envelope. She didn't even take off her shoes. She tore it open right there at the door. "Do you remember our first dance in the kitchen? You stepped on my toes and blamed my big feet." Adesewa dropped to the floor, covering her mouth. Her eyes overflowed. No one else knew about that moment, not even her best friend. That memory was hers and Obafemi's alone. The silence in the house felt different now. Not empty, more like it was watching her, waiting. That night, she didn't sleep. Again, she wrote another letter, and another, and another. Whatever it was, spirit, ghost, dream, madness, she needed to speak to it, because deep inside, something she never dared to say aloud had begun to whisper, maybe he's not really gone. The letters kept coming. Each one carried whispers from the past, things only Adesewa and Obafemi had shared. She no longer knew if this was madness or a miracle, but every time she unfolded a new page, the air around her shifted, like the walls were holding their breath. Something was happening, something beyond logic, and Sewa wasn't ready to stop. Each morning began with quiet hope, breakfast, tea, then her walk to the door, the sound of her heartbeat louder than her footsteps. Sometimes the envelope waited, sometimes it didn't, but when it did, she would hold it gently, as if Obafemi's voice lived within the fold, and in a way, it did. Each letter, though brief, carried enough truth to make her breath itch, enough love to keep her from drowning. The first few felt like a lifeline, but soon they felt heavier, more intimate, more real, like he was right there, just out of reach. One afternoon, she opened the letter, and it made her knees buckle. She sank to the floor. "Sewami, do you remember that night we stayed up till 3 a.m., talking about growing old together? You said you wanted to move to Igbo village, plant a garden. I said I'd build a house by the river, so we'd wake to the sound of water, and pepper soup every Sunday, I promised. You said, I'll hold you to that." She remembered. They were young, foolish with dreams, laughing, planning, 2 hearts believing they had time. Walked home with a bounce in her step she didn't recognize, but welcomed. Her thoughts weren't anchored to loss anymore. They floated forward toward what could be. But even in her healing, one question still lingered like smoke. Who had been writing the letters? Obafemi? A friend? Her own heart playing tricks to soothe her pain? She had asked herself 100 times, was it comfort or illusion? That evening, as dusk painted the sky in violet and gold, Adesewa sat at a desk by the window. The silence in the compound was deep, almost sacred. Then, a knock. Not loud, just one, but it startled her like thunder on a calm night. She stood, heart racing softly. She hadn't been expecting anyone. When she opened the door, she froze. There he was, Tajuddin, Obafemi's oldest friend. his brother in all but blood. He had been part of their story, from the village dance where they first met to the final days of Obafemi's illness, but she hadn't seen him in many months. Tajuddin? Her voice trembled. His smile was faint, both familiar and worn, like an old song played low. Adesuwa, he said gently, I hope I'm not intruding. I needed to talk. She nodded, stepped aside slowly. Come in, she whispered. As Tajuddin entered, she noticed the weight he carried in his shoulders, different from her grief, but carved from the same stone. There was something unsaid between them, something in the air, like rain waiting just above the clouds. She closed the door behind them softly, as if afraid to wake the spirits, listening in the silence. They sat down, the room holding its breath. Tajuddin cleared his throat, a dry, nervous sound. I've been meaning to speak with you for some time now, he said, not meeting her eyes. There's something you need to know, something I should have said long ago. Adesuwa's heart stumbled in her chest. The air felt thick, like a gathering storm. What is it, Tajuddin? She asked, her voice steady, but laced with a sharp undercurrent of curiosity. He hesitated, looked at his hands, then spoke in a quiet, unraveling voice. Adesuwa, I wrote the letters, the ones you thought were from Obafemi. Silence fell like a hammer on glass. Her breath caught. What? She whispered. Tajuddin nodded slowly, sorrow tugging at the edges of his face. I never meant to deceive you. After Obafemi passed, I saw how the light in you dimmed. You were drowning, and I couldn't watch in silence. So I gave you something to hold on to. A voice. His voice. I wanted to help you heal. His eyes shimmered with regret. I know it was wrong in some ways, but every word I wrote from the heart. I tried to write what he might have said, what I knew he would have wanted you to hear. Adesuwa sat frozen. Her thoughts whirled like harmattan dust. Every word she had clung to. Every letter soaked in tears and longing. It hadn't come from Obafemi's hand. But now, looking at Tajuddin, she saw not a liar, but a man who loved them both in different ways. A man who couldn't bear to see her break. You did it for me, she said, her voice almost too soft to hear. He nodded. Yes, I wanted to give you a reason to breathe again, to remind you of how deeply you are loved, and still are. She leaned back,